I will record our sessions. And so you can go back and play our sessions, especially if I'm lecturing and going over the material and said anything there. So that will help you also. Okay. So, but don't worry about it. As far as like the back to school night, I mostly, if it's back to school night, I give you your points anyway. It's not like you can avoid that. Um, my back to school night happens to fall on Thursdays, so I'm good, but I've missed several um in the past. So, because my back to school night doesn't even start till 5:30. So, and then I go to 6:30. So I usually do miss it. Um, any questions or concerns so far about grading? Anything like the assignments? Great. All right. So let's begin with I did a little bit of introduction for myself. If you could tell me your current position, if you're in education or not, and your experience, that helps me to go into detail or not go into detail more so because sometimes my classes are mixed. Sometimes I have everyone with lots of experience, and then I have some people who don't. So if you can let me know so I can assist and tell me why you chose school counseling.
I can start. My name is Jessica Showalter. I am in the high school setting. Have been there for 5 years now. I was at the middle school setting for 7 years prior to that. I work in special education, and I chose school counseling because I know that the program that I work in, that there is definitely going to be a wall that I hit at some point. Um, and I know that I'm going to want a backup plan for when that happens. And I have always loved the counseling side of my job. It has always
Great.
been a passion of mine. So it just seemed like an easy fit. Whether it be in the middle school side where there's more of the social emotional aspect, or the high school where it's kind of like the transcript, helping the students kind of see what they want to do in the next phase of their life. So it just seemed like a very natural progression once I kind of, like I said, hit that wall
Mhm.
that a lot of educators sometimes do. So I wanted to kind of have that backup plan. Um,
Absolutely.
so that's me.
Great. Thank you, Jessica. Who'd like to go next?
I can go.
Okay.
I'm Jenna. I am currently a substitute for a K through 8 school. I've been
Okay.
here for, I think it's been about a year. So I'm fairly new to the education world, but I've been working with kids since like high school. So I have experience in ABA therapy specifically. So working with kids who have autism. And school counseling has always been in the back of my mind. I never wanted to go back to school because it seemed really daunting, and I was just kind of burnt out with school after college. But recently, I was burnt out with ABA and kind of that field, so I just kind of went back to school counseling and I shadowed a close family friend, and it kind of just seemed like the perfect fit and the perfect time. So I'm really excited for the future.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing with us.
Yeah.
Who'd like to go next? Priscilla?
Hi there, I'm Priscilla. I am an resource teacher. I have both my mild and moderate credentials. I've worked probably in education for about maybe 15 years. I've done it all. In school counseling, I've always wanted to do it. I love the social emotional part to it. A lot of the times, because I'm a special education teacher, we can't really teach if the social emotional part's not there as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I figured right now we're also going into full inclusion. And I figured
Mm-hmm.
the best time for me to get out because it's gonna kind of be a circus. So I figured I'm like, it's just time to go.
Yeah, we're in full inclusion too. Angelica.
Hi, my name's Angelica. I'm a testing coordinator for Santa Ana
Okay.
Unified School District, and I've been working with them for
Mm.
14 years and being a testing coordinator for 3 years.
Great. Thank you,
And then
Angelica.
I want to do counseling because there was a counselor that I really admired, her work. So it kind of pushed me to say, oh, that's what I want to do. I want to be there for the students and all that. So I got inspired by that.
Great. Thank you. Blair.
Hi, I'm Blair Warner. I have been in education for about 17 years and I've taught kindergarten and second grade, and I worked for Head Start when I first started teaching. And I've always been drawn more to the social emotional, and I've always been like, well, I don't care about the testing. Like, let's worry about why this kid is coming in crying today, or why this kindergartner is running out of my classroom. I'm not worried
Right.
about whether they can read when they're falling asleep on the floor. So I think that counseling's always sort of been something that I've been more drawn to. So I finally decided to go ahead and go back to school and do it.
Great. Thank you, Blair. William.
Hello, I'm William Rivera. I work for LAUSD. I've worked as a sub for many years. And I've always felt like more of a counselor to the kids than a teacher. Someone that I met at my current school site last year told me all about this program, and I think he's an amazing leader. It's actually one of your former students. So
nice.
he really got me going on counseling. Yeah.
Great.
Mhm.
Glad to hear it. Elizabeth.
Hi there, my name is Elizabeth. I'm an English teacher at a high school right now in Fontana. So I got into school counseling because I always knew that's what I wanted to do after getting so many students telling me, Miss B, you're more like a counselor, you give off counselor vibes. So every year they tell me that and they love to come and vent to me. And so I'm like, yeah, let's just talk about how you're feeling today versus writing this essay. So I knew that I had to do something about it and get my counseling credential.
Excellent. Thank you, Elizabeth. Jackie?
I've got to learn how to unmute myself. Jeez, right away. I started it off actually as an avid tutor way back in actually 9/11. So
Right.
I was actually going to school to be a social justice lawyer. And
Mm.
I actually on 9/11, started tutoring, and then from there just kind of moved up the ranks to counseling. And I've been working in the counseling department with counselors since 07. And that's when I fell in love with it, just period, just working around counselors. I started off registering, helping them pick their classes, doing all of that. And I did that for about 5, 6 years. And now I am on my 8th year of I do the college and careers. Instead of what we do for our district, instead of paying a counselor to do it, they have what's called a PST do it. It's a pupil services technician. So that's my official title is pupil services technician, but I oversee college and careers. So, I do all of the college fairs, senior awards, setup, presentation. So the domain for college and careers became like kind of like my passion. I love that. And now I see the social emotional part of it. I know how to do the classes part of it, the academic. And I've observed, my counselors have become my friends, my like best friends, even some of them. So just watching them has really inspired me. But yeah, I just love it. I absolutely love it. And I'm at high school. So, and I've been in high school this entire time, and I really feel like I have a connection with them. So, and kids even they tell me, I thought you were a counselor. But no, I think it's time to get paid as a counselor.
Great. That's wonderful. Excellent. Paige?
Hi,
I'm the outlier here. I was a teacher years ago. I taught on the elementary level. And then for the last decade, I've been working as a pastor to children and families. And I
Okay.
just ended that career in June. And school counseling is something that has been in my mind for at least a decade, probably longer. And it's interesting. I've interacted a lot with counselors because I have 4 kids who have all graduated, gone through junior high and high school. And I've actually a lot of times thought, as I was meeting with them, with their counselor over the years, thinking, I think I would actually like that job and probably would be a good fit. So that's why I sort of started checking it out. And so far, so good.
Great. Thank you. Haley?
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a substitute teacher right now, and I've been for about 2 years. And what really made me want to be a school counselor is after I finished my BA in psychology, I didn't know if I wanted to be a school counselor or a school psychologist. And so I took a year or two, or yeah, 2 years to, work closely with both. And I got to see that the school counselor kind of works more closely with the students, and and more like social emotional, and I like that a lot more. So I finally was like, it's time to go back to school, even though I didn't really want to. So yeah, that's just why I wanted to be a school counselor.
Great. Thank you, Kaylee. And I think we have Patricia.
Okay, hi guys.
Hi.
My name is Patricia Padilla, and I've been a substitute teacher now for 2 years, going on my third. And what has really motivated me is becoming a parent, and I'm so motivated by the needs that my child needs, and versus the needs that are not being met in the world. And I think that's what inspires me to be a counselor. And that's it.
Thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
Julia. Julia.
Hi, my name's Julia, and I've been in education like 30 years. So right after college, I grew up in the Bay Area and I live in San Francisco now. I did like a domestic Peace Corps. So even reading some of the materials so far is very close to some of what I got to witness, some of the effects of the white flight in North Philadelphia. Melba Beals, claim to fame, bought my family home in Marin, and she was one of the first students, to be part of the integrated schools. So I was a government major. I went back and got my master's in public health, health ed at the school. It's a Catholic school, so I do a lot of retreat work, meditation, education. I'm teaching comparative religions for the first time, so a lot to learn. And I guess when you asked the question, I was thinking of when I lived in DC, hearing Marian Wright Edelman talk about how much more effective she could kind of be outside of a system. And so for me, the choice to be a school counselor like Paige has probably been in my brain for a year. I think money, time have felt like barriers. But for me, it's always about educating the whole child. I don't want to be in relationship, giving you grades, doing class discipline. I just want to love you up, support you up, guide you up. So it's a privilege to be here.
Well, thank you, Miss Julia. Thank you. That kind of rounds us up. Like you, Julia, my story is similar. I went in, come from a family of educators. So been listening and hearing about education. My mom's in special ed. My sister's a principal. So just been around that for many, many years. My grandparents, my great grandparents, all of them in education. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I vowed never to be educated, tried some other things first, then realized that I was really good with the kids. I could manage them well. I did 4-H, a couple of other programs. And what I really liked so much about it was having the resources and being able to do the fun stuff, So when I went in as a teacher. I did fourth, fifth, and then I did eighth grade. I knew in my first year as a fourth grade teacher, they were bringing elementary counselors full time in my district to every site. So the counselor came in. I had the lowest group of kids, and the counselor came in. They had already been assessed. They didn't qualify for any services, so they said just teach them. So what I learned from them was they needed to be loved, like Julia said. They needed the social emotional. They needed all of that. So they were coming from a lot of different backgrounds. And when the school counselor came in and started doing sharing circle, I said, I want to be you. So I no longer wanted to teach, like you said, math, reading, we had the whole gamut. It's fourth grade, right? So I then went back to school, got my master's degree, and became a school counselor. And here I am many, many years later. So I really, really loved the middle school. I brought in the peer mediation, I brought all that stuff. It was just program oriented. The kids are like a little bit independent and you can bring all that great stuff to them. But the adolescent years are very taxing. You get burnt out quickly. So then I went up to high school, love that, love the aha moment and then finally getting it, the maturity matching up. So that was great. And I started teaching at the university level. And then we had this big shift where it was like, oh, should we keep counselors? Should we not? That was the dry years. And during those dry years, it looked like they were going to get rid of counselors. And then we had the mental health scare. And so then when we had the mental health scare, that's when everybody said, oh no, we can't get rid of the counselors. And so it's been great for counseling ever since. So we have a lot of overlap, like we have social workers, MFTs, we have that do a lot of the same things that we do. And in the past, we only had to compete with just the school psychs, and we weren't even really competing with them because they focused on assessment the entire time. And then we focused on the rest of the child. So it was an easier balance. Now we're kind of back to competing a little bit. We've got MFTs, we've got social workers, and all of them can do a little bit of what we can do. So the importance of this program really is making sure that you are doing what you are certified to do and that you're doing it well so that they don't write out your position. They need to see the value in our position and the importance of our position, and so that we don't get replaced. I've seen some districts replace all of their counselors with social workers. I've seen them replace them with MFTs and interns and temporary people. So we want to make sure that we're creating a program that is comprehensive and that we're making sure that we're getting out there and doing the things that ASCA says that we can do, and we're doing it well, using data to formulate that. And we will talk a lot about that today. So with our marginalized population, we're going to talk a little bit today about, and I'll go into chapters 1 and 2 of our book, Interrupting Racism. So if you haven't gotten the book, and I've got a lot of stuff, and there's not a lot of time because we're pushing on 7 right now. So I'll get through as much as I can, and then I'll always send you additional links. If you're not able to get to it in the week because school's just now starting, and as school starts, I recognized your hand, William. I saw it, so give me a second. I just don't want to finish my thought. I'll give you links, and feel free to copy the links because it's on my YouTube webpage. So you'll always have access to it as long as you have the link. Okay, because I never erase anything off of the YouTube page. And then that way you can access some of the information in the future if you don't get to it, at this time. William, you had a question?
Yes, just a real quick question. Going back to what you were talking about when you said the mental health scare, what was that?
Well, when we had a rise in the mental health, where a lot of people were needing more mental health. And so that's when they said, oh my gosh, And remember, it started with the adults and then trickled down to the kids really fast. And then we started doing more ACEs. ACEs has always been around. Everybody know what ACEs is? The adverse, what is it called? Adverse childhood, what's the E? But it's an assessment that they give to see about trauma in their life. And they use the risk factors to determine what your score is. And then the higher your score is, the more mental health, the more you've been exposed to trauma. And they try to say that, not try to say, their data supports that that individual tends not to be able to experience this. Thank you. Tends not to be able to learn as quickly and cognitively. And so it's affecting the learning environment, which is what we're all about. So when that was increasing and we had more children being affected by it, some even were living in certain neighborhoods and environments where they were saying that their experience was similar daily as to being in war. And, here in the US, we haven't really had that. Unlike in other countries, children are consistently exposed to war. And so that's the mental health crisis that I was really kind of referring to, that they said, oh, we definitely need a school counselor. And then they started to lower our ratios. Remember that, because our ratios traditionally in California, school counselor to student was somewhere in the 600s. Because there's only one at every campus. And then for our high schools, when they were really tipping over a lot, you had like one to every 2,000 almost, or 1,000. So then they started putting more money into employing more school counselors. And as they employed more, it kind of decreased our ratio. And then we got a better ability to work with the student on a whole so that they can improve academically also. Okay, so that's where we are. We hear a lot about mental health now. We hear a lot about starting early. The TK program is now letting students in. You just have to, if you turn 4 in June, so you'll be 5 by by June 1st of your TK year, you can be in TK. So, and it used to be, we kind of stopped that like around December, then we expanded to January, then we went to April. So now TK is really popular, and TK has been very, very helpful with the learning and giving those students that exposure early on. TK doesn't really have a curriculum. It has, frameworks. And so it just gives that child that extra practice. And then when they go into kinder, they're moving fast. Now, kinder, you don't have to know that much. Write your name, 1 to 20, and the basic functions. But then first grade goes super fast. So if a child is just grasping that information, they quickly go downhill fast by first grade. And then what happens? We always want to assess them and put them in special ed. And then that doesn't really help. It was Priscilla who was telling us about how we're going to full inclusion. And full inclusion for some school districts, mine, has eliminated the mild to moderate class completely. And so we only have moderate to severe, which means that all students who used to be in mild to moderate now go into GE, general education. So we have all of the different behaviors in that one class. And then we're looking at co-teaching models, which is what Priscilla was talking about. So we are already there. All of our kids that used to be in mild to moderate SDC, one class, K5, now are in general ed. And they may not fit there, honestly, because even though they are in there, they're still not able to do the work at that level. So what do we have? More behavioral problems, more acting out, because it's frustrating for those students. And even though they're getting support, they're getting RSP support, it's still not enough. And so we're seeing that. And that's what Priscilla was talking about. Like, it's kind of chaotic. And so the goal is now to add another teacher in the room, which is we're having now the ideal co-teaching model would be an RSP teacher and then also a regular ed teacher in that room, so that they're fully included, but they can get their needs met throughout the day instead of the small group. And then the RSP teacher also has extra expertise for those who have not been identified. So that's kind of like where we're going. And then, okay, so that's where we are in school council. So I'm going to start talking about integration and the achievement gap. And I have a couple of videos for you that kind of highlight the achievement gap. Share my screen. I gotta share sound too. And give me 1 second because I lost you guys. My view is wrong. Give me 1 second. My view is actually wrong. Let me figure out. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and begin. Something is going on with me here. I think it's because I'm recording. All right, let me change my everything. Okay, I'm just gonna go. All right. Okay, so the achievement gap. So with the achievement gap, it is defined as a group of students by race or ethnicity or gender that outperforms another group. And the difference in the average score for the two groups is statistically significant. So when we talk about the achievement gap, we're mostly talking about the one between the Black and white students and the Hispanic and white students. And that's what the data has covered most of the time for over a period of time. And so people have compared these two groups, and they are now thinking that the comparison isn't as accurate as they want to be. And we're talking more about opportunity gap. So the difference between the two scores of two students, for instance, a male and a female, can only be considered an achievement gap if differences in statistics are statistically significant, and that there is no margin of error. So there are several ways that gaps can be seen or displayed, and whether the gap depends on the amount of change or the average score for the two students. For example, a gap can narrow if the averages of both groups improve, but one group score improves, or if one group score improves more than the other. So if both groups increase at the same rate, the score gap may not change. So we've seen this over time with our different groups. And so as we've seen this, many of the, we've used this data to help drive our students, academics, and their what they need to focus on and how we can drive our instructional schedules. So I'm going to play a couple of videos for you on, and I have these in a different place. And I'm going to show you the different videos on the achievement gap because I want to show you in the different states. So we'll start on the East Coast, move over to Colorado, and then we'll come to California. All right, can everybody see everything? Because I can't see you guys. I don't know what's going on with my, no, you can't see anything? Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I can't see you. I'm trying to figure out what's going on with this.
The video came up for a second and then that was it. I don't know.
Let me do this.
Can you put it in the chat and maybe one of us can share it?
Okay, I think I got it. Here we go.
Okay.
Better?
We can see it.
Perfect.
Educational inequality is probably more than anything else the fundamental root of broader inequality. If we look at inequality in access to particular careers, inequality in income and wealth, inequality in the nature of political participation, all those things are mitigated by equalizing the skills that education produces, not only the academic skills, but the dispositions, the frames of minds, the conscientiousness, the diligence, the sense of agency. And so I think there is nothing more important we could do to produce the type of society we want than to raise outcomes in the field of education so that knowing somebody's race or ethnicity tells you nothing at all about what their test scores or grades or occupation might be.
Boston is a place where I think we are a national leader on many educational fronts, but the story is really that we're not doing everything that we want to be doing. We aren't delivering on all of the outcomes that we want to deliver, and it's really an educational equity issue. So we do see the disparities by gender and by race in educational outcomes in Boston, and if we're really going to get to for all results, which is where Boston wants to get, we've got to dig in on educational equity issues.
There's not just one challenge to face when we talk about achievement gaps. Even if we just talk about racial achievement gaps, we have students of color in high-income suburban districts that are lagging their white classmates. We have inner-city school districts that are high poverty, have a difficult time attracting teachers. So the work that needs to happen is to figure out how in each of these contexts we can make the changes that are necessary to produce the excellence to which we aspire. There are needs that kids in inner cities have that people in upper income suburbs never even imagine. But the most effective schools and teachers in the inner city adapt to those needs. They meet the kids where they are. They establish person-environment fit for these kids as they pass through the school. And if we can do that at some greater scale, it truly is plausible that we can have much less poverty in the next generations, and that we can have the society with regard to race that we want in the future. Achievement gaps by race, gender, and socioeconomic status are stark in the national data by the age of 2. So we can't wait till school starts. There's an initiative we just launched in Boston called the Boston Basics, where we've got 5 basic ideas about early childhood parenting, 5 propositions that we want everybody in the city to know. We're saturating the city with what young parents of young children need to know in order that their kids don't fall behind by the age of 2. It's not just about giving them information, it's about building that niche of social support around them so that they know that the grandparents and the relatives and the minister and the barber all know this is important and that they are being supported to do these things. You can do it with materials that are already in the house, and there's nothing in here that is particular to any particular racial, ethnic, or socioeconomic group. This is human stuff. This is stuff that everybody in the community can benefit from. Second thing that excites me these days is the youth culture piece of it. Schools have 2 curricula. They have the curricula the teachers teach and the ones that kids teach. Part of what we're picking up is a lot of the misbehavior is instances where kids are doing things they don't even want to do. They're just trying to fit in. And so the idea of intervening into the youth culture and helping kids to develop the culture they really want in their school. They've already got the right values. They don't have the social opportunities to live out those values.
We just have to help students want to help each other.
It takes student leadership to give people permission even to say what they would think is cool. So are you a student leader?
I tried.
You try to be? Well, how plausible is it that you could organize a project at the school where you would get students to talk honestly about the way they really want it to be? Because if you could, we can tell your story. You can help other people at other places. There's no choice but to try to make the things happen that we know need to happen. Because it's too scary what would happen if they don't happen. These days are so reminiscent of the 60s and early 70s. All those issues are coming back. There was a period where you thought we'd gotten over that. But there are enough instances where people have produced lots of progress in inner city schools to think that if we really want to do it, if we really have the political will to make it happen, we can. It's our generational responsibility to work on it, no matter whether we're optimistic or pessimistic.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next video. And I believe this one is Colorado. Yeah.
The achievement gap is that difference in academic performance and proficiency between African American and Latino and Native American students versus the Anglo or white students.
It's really the difference between Black and brown students versus their white counterparts and the academic difference that exists. It's also by income. And in Denver, we know that income and ethnicity are highly correlated. And it's that gap that exists from achievement that starts at kindergarten and doesn't, and while we're doing a better job as a school district, it doesn't ever really close.
The achievement gap, which is also frequently now talked about as the opportunity gap, is the inequity of opportunity that our children have to achieve the same future in their lives by especially race and class.
And the question behind the achievement gap is why do some students do so well and other students we never overcome their zip code or their parents' income level? Why can't schools make up for that?
It shows up because students who have different socioeconomic backgrounds don't get access to a set of skills or experiences, which means they show up to school, kindergarten, 5th grade, 9th grade, freshman year of college, without the same set of background they would have gotten if they were born a mile to the east or a mile to the west or with a parent that made $50,000 more than their parents make.
There are some individuals who just getting out of 8th grade is enough. who just getting through high school is enough. And then there's another demographic of individuals who are being told graduate school, higher education. And I think the achievement gap that I see comes in the messaging that we give to students.
I think you can also look at achievement gaps around academic preparation, around students with special needs, students who are English language learners. I think there are really important gaps there as well.
A lot of times it has to do with what's happening at the student's home.
I think the achievement gap really starts with what people are calling it now, which is an opportunity gap. So what you see at the end is a reflection of what happens at the beginning of the education system.
The allocation of resources for the schools, the allocation of human resources, the buildings that students are in, even the layout of buildings that way. And so I think all of those different factors go into the achievement gap. And then I think the achievement gap is as well the time and opportunity that our parents have to really be advocates for their own child's education.
The achievement gap is that you as a white middle-class person has to run 26.2 miles. The Latino student has to run 30 miles. The black student who grew up in poverty with the single mom has to run 35 miles. That's really the achievement gap. What's happening is that nobody's showing up at the starting line equal. And somehow, at the end of the marathon, is a college graduation or is a great career. Well, they have to make up 10 miles.
When we talk about the achievement gap, which I call an opportunity gap, and the reason I do is because it's not the kids' fault they're not achieving. The blame lies here with policymakers and others who have neglected to really factor in their achievement as a priority.
We're going to turn now to our GMA cover story. I had the privilege of sitting down.
And finally, we have the one from California and how they are looking at the achievement gap.
Come on in, guys. Good morning. A lot of these kids fall through the cracks. They think of a place like Oakland, and it's like Oakland, or it's East Oakland. It's like crime, poverty.
Oakland really has a really bad dropout rate. I could say, honestly, I've lost kids to prostitution. I mean, there's a few girls that are on East 14th right now. Unfortunately, I lost 2 kids to gang-infested neighborhoods where, yeah, they got shot and killed. And so we lose that. We lose them like that.
So many exciting education efforts really focus on closing what's called the achievement gap. Today, we're going to spend some time with Susanna Loeb, a leading researcher, to learn more about what the achievement gap is. We're also going to visit the Oakland Charter Academy to see the human side of this data and the students that it actually impacts.
When I think about achievement gaps, I think that they're just these big structural differences between the average achievements of groups that really should be performing at about the same level. You're a child who happens to be born into a higher income or middle income family. You are 50% at least likely to go and complete a college degree. If you're the same child, but you're born into a low income family, then you have something like a 1 in 10 chance of going to college, a huge difference. There's also racial and ethnic gaps and gender gaps and language gaps. It's a reflection of not giving kids the opportunity that they need to be what they could be.
I'm not pro-charter. I mean, I shouldn't be saying this right now, but I mean, I'm just pro-good schools. I myself come from a farm-working family, raised in a trailer. When we talk about achievement gap, you should never judge a student from their zip code.
Is it possible for changes to schools and school models to shift with that gap, to decrease the gap?
Schools have traditionally been the lever that we have to make a difference in kids' lives, and I think we've had increasing evidence that schools can really do that.
So those are all the students that Mr. Lopez and Ms. Villa have worked with.
Actually, I have like a few of them graduating this month from different colleges. Jenny Luan graduated from Amherst, and she came back, and she's gonna go to medical school. A lot of them come back, which is really nice.
That's exciting.
Yeah. They're from here. They're gonna be here. Their parents are gonna be here. You live in Fruitvale, right down the street, right?
Yeah.
Come talk to us for a second. So she has older siblings that came to the school system as well. And then your sister is now in college, right?
Yeah.
At what school?
UC Santa Cruz. I like to think of the school as being my role models and also my sister, because I think about my future and I want to be something in life. I really want to set an example for my younger sisters and other classmates.
Great research helps us understand inequalities in education so we can all come together to fix them. There's a lot more to figure out about how to erase the achievement gap, but it's inspiring to know that great educators are already making a difference.
Your thoughts on a couple of the videos. So as you can see, we looked at different areas in the US, and what would you say were some of the commonalities?
Jobs versus an income versus like sorry, something just popped up. Versus the race. Like it's always the gap.
Yes, absolutely. And then we had different groups on different, depending on the area. So some people talked a little bit about like, what was the barrier? What were the barriers? And so we had gangs, we had gender, we had ethnicity, we had income. So those are all the barriers. And we take a look at that, and that's what we're going to focus on in our paper. So you're looking for those things, and I hope those 3 videos were helpful in getting you started with your paper and what you're looking for as you're gathering that data from whatever school you're going to use for that paper. Okay, so did somebody else want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that do we have access to those videos? Did you share those with us anywhere else, or?
I'll share my PowerPoint with you so that you can review
Okay.
them. They're in my PowerPoint. So you just click on the link in my PowerPoint.
Yeah, I got
Okay.
chills. I was just telling you, I got chills. Yeah, and I loved how that council member actually took ownership.
Yes.
Yeah, I just love that.
Yeah, and that's what we're all kind of facing. Everybody has a little bit of some type of gap or opportunity gap in their school. So, and it's our job as school counselors to figure out what that gap is and then how we can identify it and then how we can help with that group, whatever that group is for your school. If it's language, they talked a lot about language, they talk about special needs. So it depends on what it is. So some solutions that have been tried, it's like since the 1960s, they kind of looked at preschool reforms, teacher reforms, instructional reforms, and standard-based reforms. And the preschool reforms were preschool programs that came into existence to increase achievement, and we've seen that some of those have worked, right? And so we're increasing that also with our adding our TK programs to the public schools, and we have Head Start that helps us there. The teacher reforms were understanding teacher quality, making sure we had highly qualified teachers, and so we defined what good teaching is. And so we have that standards-based idea. So we're looking, we took a look at that. And then we have instructional reforms where we were trying to do the standards base. We did the Common Core standards so that if a child came from one state to the next, that was our last reform in education. So if they came from one state to another, we had a comparison because each state was taking a different standardized test at the end of the year and they didn't measure up. And so you didn't know if you got a student from someplace else, if they really were. And then we had our different areas, met the standard, didn't meet the standard, exceeded the standard. So we used all of that. So they found that many of the programs found that that they had great effects from greater teaching. And it improved some of the marginalized populations, such as the Black students and the Hispanic students, and then it helped them to improve achievement over time. And then our final reform was, another reform that they used was class size reduction. Now, they didn't have as much improvement with class size reduction, which is why we're struggling today to keep our class sizes at a smaller number, because it doesn't match up with the increase in pay that we pay the teachers. So we need the bodies in the seat to pay the teachers the high qualities, to go back to the teacher reform and pay them what they deserve to be paid because they're working so long. But then when you decrease the number of students, you don't have the money from your attendance to be able to pay it in salary. So we've got all of these different things. So I think some people are keeping class size reduction because the benefit of having it is better than not having it. But if you do it incorrectly, it is a severe penalty. Okay. So you have to deal with that. Let me see what else. I'm running out of time, so I'm going through my slides really quickly and talking, but again, I will send you the slide. So I just want to hit the major points. I have another video here. Let me see. So what's driving the achievement gap today is basically affordability, accessibility, and social skills. So we need to make sure that we are addressing those big areas because that tends to increase the achievement gap if we're not looking at. Okay, chapter 2 goes into white privilege, and it basically just kind of defines what white privilege is and how we need to be aware of it so that when we're having cultural conversations. Now, one of the things that I want to point out about the white privilege is that what's most important is that we can have a disagreement. So I can feel this way and you can feel that way, but the idea in a culturally responsive conversation is I listen to you, you listen to me, and together we decide what we're going to do for that child if we share that child, right? So it's not about I'm right, you're wrong. It's about this is what I see. I didn't see it your way. Okay, you're giving me something else, a different viewpoint. Now, with that different viewpoint, I can agree or disagree. But what I need to check myself to see what is stopping me from agreeing. Is it because I'm internalizing what you said because I belong to that ethnic group and I don't want to? Or is it that I'm just understanding, okay, or I do want to help and say, okay, I just didn't see it that way. All right, let's move forward. And so how do we help the child from that perspective? Okay, so we're not all going to agree on the same thing because we come from different backgrounds, different environments, and different thoughts. So, but we do need to come together on how we can help that child that's in need. Okay. And so that's the main point that I want to kind of talk about. Also, racism versus white privilege. And that's not the same thing. So just understanding that racism is about power plus privilege versus just white privilege is just have not, it has nothing to do with power. Power is oppressing people, using that against them so that they can't achieve. Okay, white privilege might be, I just don't see it that way. So, because I come from a different background, and so I'm listening to understand that viewpoint and then trying to apply it to the child that's in need. Okay, and also the other thing about racism is it's an action. Like there's a purpose, a driven purpose to keep that individual down. There's an action upon it. Okay. Right. Let's see how much time do I have? So for school counselors, we want to focus on our ethical standards. And I have a whole nother video on our ethical standards that I really want to share with you. And it's a very long video, so it's worth watching. But I'm not sure, maybe this week you'll have a little bit of time to watch it. And then it really talks about how the ethical standards changed in 2022. So every 7 years, our ethical standards are rewritten. The last time that they reviewed it was in 2016, and then they redid it in 22. So the video kind of goes over the process of how they went about going over those ethical standards and implementing those ethical standards for the future. So what counselors should do, we need to provide a safe and collaborative environment. We need to call things out when we see it because we're advocating for all students. We need to speak up and know how to speak up. So again, we're not having a debate with another individual. We are acknowledging their viewpoint as well as providing additional information on another viewpoint. Okay. And then we need to be a system of change. Because if you're seeing something, if the data is proving that this group is historically marginalized and they're always being left out, what can we do within our program as school counselors to continue to advocate so that that group of students is not consistently left out and that they get the same opportunity as all of the other students? Because sending them to school and just them being exposed does not necessarily equate to the same exact opportunity. Okay. Let's see. So we want to encourage a growth mindset that allows us to, grow and change and not be stuck. And we also want to create new stories. Okay, so we want to listen and create new environments where people feel welcome. And that's kind of like with that last video in Fruitville. They live in a bad neighborhood, but that school created new stories for them, gave them hope. And so that's why they go back as students and visit that school. And they continued because someone there didn't see them as the same person or the area or the previous siblings that came from there, but they saw them as an individual and then encouraged them to grow, encouraged them to do their best, and encouraged them to seek out their dreams. All right, it is 7:22. So I'm going to end class here. And are there any questions or concerns about what is upcoming?